Welcome to Future Fit Sales Hire, how to eliminate the guesswork and build elite revenue teams. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Lori Richardson, who will be sharing all of her great insights. She's an award-winning sales growth strategist and founder of Score More Sales. So welcome, Lori.
Hey, Janice, it's so good to see you. How are you?
I'm hot. What can I say? It's the hottest.
We're both hot. It's hot out there.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Well, we know like hiring still relies on gut feel, polished resumes and CVs and outdated playbooks, and it's costing companies dearly. Bad sales hires cost over 100,000 in lost revenue, not to mention the impact on the morale of the team and lost management time. So for everyone here, I would love to hear your comments. There's a question that I've posted for you. Make sure that you connect with myself and Lori after this session, so you've got all of the links there. If there's any other questions, anything we didn't answer, either post it in the comments, or you can ask myself or Lori after this event. We've only got 30 minutes. We've got so much to cover. So Lori, what I'm going to do is share some stats with the audience first of all. And the first thing is that every month we do a poll, and this month's poll asks what's the biggest challenge when hiring salespeople? And it's really interesting. 43% of those that voted said that it was relying too much on gut feel rather than data. Yeah. And you and I have got an answer to that, haven't we, right, Lori?
Yeah.
So 43%. That's shocking, isn't it, really? They're citing that themselves. And then 21% was cited poor onboarding, which we know is a recurring problem.
Huge issue.
Yes, it is. Harvard Business Review said that 50% of sales hire fail within the first 18 months. And we're using really crude methods to hire the most essential resources into any growing enterprising and business. CVs and resumes, the predictive effectiveness of them is only 18%. Interviews is the gut feel is 20%. Behavioral tests, behaviors, EI, psychological testing, 20%. And referrals that we often pay a lot of money for is only 23%.
Wow.
Nuts.
Yeah. And now's not the time to take a chance on whether someone's going to be good or not. We can't afford that right now with all the changes and all the AI that's being put into place. We need to know that our sellers are top sellers.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to go on to discuss this, but I really want those on the call or even the recording to think about, have you made a bad sales hire? What is the impact of that? And looking at the future, can you afford to do that going forward?
Yeah, and I might add, I made lots of them when I was in management, and I found that at my very best, I could do 50% of the time. I could tell, but the problem is when we're good at sales, or we think we're good, we may know some foundational things to get hired, and but we don't have all the other components that we need to be successful. But we can talk our way into a role, and I know I did that many times, as well as having lots of people applying who said that they would do this or that. And I saw on somebody's LinkedIn post just this morning about it was about hiring better, and at the end they said, as long as they're telling the truth. And I thought, well, there you go.
How do you know?
And the only way that I've found in the last 10 years is to include a core competency assessment, which you and I work with, and we've had extremely great results. And I can't tell you how many people that I work with that are helping companies hire, and they say, unless you do this piece, I'm not going to work with you as a consultant. So that's, it's not hard. It's doable. It's just that people think that they can work around it. And I'm sure people now think they can make an AI tool, that will figure it out for them. But in fact, we have such a large data set, and, based on that data that you and I look at, top sales performers only represent 16%.
Yeah.
And so
16%. Look at your teams now, 16%.
Yeah. And you need that. You need those top sales performers, because they're going to be way more likely to exceed their goals. And like four times more. Yeah, 4 times more likely. So it's a really big deal. It's not just, if you can figure it out in a year, whether you've hired the right person, like that's a year wasted. What if you could figure it out before they even started, or you had a hunch, or you evaluated your existing team to find out who is really there with the grit and the will to be successful? I mean, that can be done now.
Well, there's another stat that 77% of people in sales 77% of salespeople either shouldn't be in sales or in the wrong role in sales. So having that information to put people in the right position is setting them up for success.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, Janice, as you know, is that when people evaluate their existing sales team, when they work with you or I, they don't have to fire someone if someone isn't strong, but typically it will create a conversation. It's kind of like, I know. And so now we're more free to talk about the fact that you don't really like being a manager. And so you want to be moved back to being an individual contributor, or you want to move into RevOps or some other area. There's so many options that we never encourage anyone to fire anyone or, to downsize, but they will get a snapshot and then they can verify it with what they've observed as well. And they can make really sound decisions. And now, again, this reminds me kind of COVID time, where you just have to be really careful about what you do strategically with your sales team, so that you're in a growth mode with top performers, and those C players are not part of that effort anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. In assessing the team, it's absolutely crucial to pinpoint the specific competencies, as you say, that a seller needs in order to succeed in the individual role. But how else can you do that unless you have that insight, that real data that gives you, and it's predictive data we're talking about, and it's verified for on the job. This is how, before you even hire, if they're going to be successful in your role, in your market. They've got the company fit. It just seems crazy to me that sales leaders do what they've always done, even though it's that 50-50 that you've talked about, Lori.
Yeah. And a lot of the leadership above the sales managers, sometimes they think, well, the sales manager knows what to do, which they don't. And they think our head of sales, we just got a head of sales, they know what to do, which they don't always know. And so leadership, I like to work with the top leadership in a large SMB size company or a smaller mid-market company, because we can reach the leadership and say, there's some really important things that you need to understand. And it's not just about competencies, the tactical ones, like whether someone can call high and get a meeting. It's not just about that, but it's more about the will, that grit, to be successful, and how people handle things like rejection, and who, what's going on in their heads. Are they saying things that are supporting their efforts, or are they sabotaging themselves? Because even if I know how to close business all day long, but deep down I have this, death wish almost, that I'm not going to be successful, and something's going to go wrong and the other shoe's going to drop. and that will kill you in sales. And so we need to find ways to identify these, and we found a way to do that, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Lori, I was at a networking kind of training event yesterday, and they were talking about pipeline. And I thought it was really interesting because they were talking about deal management, how to manage the deal, a better way to do it, and all the stats that create the results that you want. And I didn't want to burst the bubble too much, but realistically, deal management is critical because it's so much more complicated, but really it's only about 40% of the success of the deal. The rest of it, as you've just said, is what's going on there between there. So you've got to be able to coach the individuals, because if they have limiting beliefs and real gaps there, it doesn't matter if the deal is great on paper. It's the people that get it over the line and the relationship they have. So it's what's going on there. You cannot manage a deal, and you cannot coach a deal unless you're able to coach the individual that's in the deal.
Right. Yeah. And, that's been going on for eons. It seems like I think about a couple of things when you were talking. One is that as head of sales, I think it is good to kind of spot check and do an audit and say, let me see what you've done with this deal, and kind of look through notes, which should be recorded, which aren't always recorded. Mm-hmm. These are things that you got to get done. Your top performers do these things, but people who are not top performers cannot give a good sense of what's been going on. And most of us, again, because we're not all top performers, are not following up enough. We're not adding value. We're just checking in instead of, I just did this the other day with a couple of prospective clients where I sent something that I think is of value to them. Just to say, it's been a while since we talked. I don't know if you've seen this, thought it might be helpful in your industry, and, hope to connect with you later in the summer. And that's it. That's it. But I'm not going to drop the ball, because that's just what we tend to do, is that, well, they're not interested. If they were, you have to switch that off in your brain, that if someone isn't getting back to you, it doesn't mean that they're not interested until they tell you it, that.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Now I've got to give a shout out to your book, She Sells: Attract, Promote and Retain Great Women in B2B Sales. And I really want to say, this gives you all of those strategies that you need to do exactly: attract, promote and retain for great women in sales. But actually all sales leaders need these tactics and strategies, because it means they're able to do the job so much better and attract a diversity of people. So it works for all salespeople. It's a fantastic book.
Yeah, and it's still timely, because I talked with a professor that a lot of people know was at a conference recently all about sales in academia, and these folks, that the professors that run college sales and university sales programs. And he was telling me that all the presenters were male, and that it was about 10% female attendees. And I thought, well, and then people wonder why things don't really change. And so we, it's just part of the ecosystem that we need to keep reminding people that, we should have more women hired in sales roles, that they do make great sellers. Generally speaking, we still assess them because we want to know, because it's not a gender-based thing, that although some people might disagree with that. And it's just an important thing to think about, is the balance and the inclusiveness of your sales team.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, the thing that everybody is talking about, AI. I know that you attended a SaaStr recently, and it'd be really great to discuss some of the takeaways, because I was reading post that event that AI outperforms mediocre sales reps. Wow.
Yeah, and I would not disagree with that. The challenge I had with SaaStr is that you would think, and this is true for some companies, like people are retooling. Every SaaS-based company that hasn't used AI is retooling. They're working 7 days a week. It's a big time of change right now. Some teams have split so that some are working on one product, some are working on another AI-enabled product. And for sure, it was the thing that people talked about. And people talked about it the year before, but not like this. This was like, the breakthroughs that have happened and the adoption and the fact that search, is just totally almost obsolete, right?
Yeah.
I don't need Google search anymore. I mean, there's just so many interesting things going on. And I like change, so I'm not dragged down by it, but I would imagine there are a lot of people in sales roles that are kind of a bit paralyzed that might be dabbling in it. But the fact is, if you're not looking at ways that you can incorporate things, I believe that it is true that maybe there will be one salesperson where there were 10 before. There's definitely going to be less salespeople in the future, not at this moment, although I just heard, more tech companies are downsizing their sales team. Heard one yesterday, big company that starts with the letter M, and they are reducing their sales staff. So it's happening. And the antidote is to be really good, is to improve your skills. If you're in sales, if you're an individual contributor, work on retooling your skills, get evaluated, find out where you stand. If you're a leader, figure out who's strong on your team and really hone in on those folks, and the ones that are just calling it in, that are doing half-assed work, if you will. They're not going to survive. And I truly believe that.
Yeah. I think so. All companies are tooling up and have got AI in their title somewhere. If they can shoehorn it in, they're putting it in. And then the other element that you mentioned was in terms of, is it the BDRs and SDRs that is AI threatening, or is it across the whole of the revenue team?
I think it's across the whole of the revenue team, because let's take a sales manager, for example. What do sales managers hate to do, Janice?
They hate to manage. But then, like all of that data that they need to crunch in order to analyze what's happening in their team. And,
but AI does that now.
Yeah.
AI does that now. AI coaches now. It doesn't mean you don't need human involvement. I'm not saying that. And I'm not trying to be, I don't want to sound like doomsday, but the fact is, many white collar jobs, and there are some top experts that have been echoing this. That's like the easiest layer to replace with AI. It's hard to replace a plumber or an electrician with AI right now, because we need humans to do that. What I think it will be more like the grocery stores, where suddenly there are 6 quick checkout and one person that's overseeing that, instead of all the cashiers lined up next to each other. So that's how it will happen. And it's how it is happening right now, is that people are utilizing AI for certain things: customer success, customer service. If you call into certain companies right now, you get AI responding. Yeah. And so that's just what's going to happen. And so we need to figure out, okay, what are those soft skills? What are the skills that the empathy and the deep communication skills and the collaboration skills that we can strengthen and find ways to leverage with AI? That's going to be a winning combination.
And all the more reason why you need to take a data-driven approach in order to make sure you have the right skill set in the team, focusing on those softer skills that are critical to get the deals over the line, the relationship, the ability to empathize with your customer. So all the more important. Wendy's just a comment here. Let's show Wendy's comments. Thank you very much for that. Check out More Human. Thank you very much for that referral, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy.
Yeah, she says it addresses exactly what Lori is saying. Really appreciate your comments here.
Yeah, I mean, I remember decades ago when I was talking about soft skills, and the leadership was like, "Oh, we don't care about that." Nobody cared about soft skills, but they're, in fact, maybe they should be called something else, because they're the survival skills. They're the ones that we're bringing as humans.
Good reframe, survival skills.
The human skills that we can bring in large amounts to, that idea of reading the room and appropriately answering based on what the customer or the buyer is talking about. So important right now.
Yeah. I mean, all of this is about future fitting your sales team using data-informed processes. Is actually raising the bar. It's not a threat, it's raising the bar and enabling us to do the things that we're really good at. The AI hasn't caught up all of the human aspects as being more human, as Wendy has suggested. So let's talk a bit more about that future fit. What are the strategies to hire future fit talent? What would you say, Lori?
Well, starting with hiring the right people and onboarding them well, I think is a really good piece of that. Our friend Annie Miller wrote a book about that goes into length about onboarding, and certainly even if you bring on the right person but they're not onboarded well, they won't be successful. And so that's a really important combination that I'd be thinking about in the beginning, that get the right people, make sure you evaluate your team and make sure you have the right people, and do refreshers and focus on what's most important. And that comes from top leadership on a regular basis. That'd be my first thing I'd suggest.
Yeah, and it's interesting from the OMG research. I mean, because it's a huge database of like each of the assessments has 462 points of data. So after 30 years, it's great being able to go back to interrogate the data to really understand for your industry, for your market, what great looks like. And it's interesting from this OMG research data, the top 5% of the best salespeople in the world, 62% of them are introverts. And that's kind of contrary to what we think and what we're still hiring for in terms of those more extrovert characters of a salesperson. And the bottom 10% of the worst salespeople in the world, 84% of them are extroverts, which is incredible, isn't it?
Which is why it's so funny that people think you can hire based on personality, and there are all these personality tests, and people go, "Oh, we still use this personality test," but it doesn't work for sales, because you can have a similar personality that is a strong seller or a weak seller, and introverts have been killing it for years, in sales roles.
Yeah. The other thing that I'd add is build a talent pipeline before you need the talent pipeline, because we often make bad decisions because we've got all of these targets, we're under pressure, sales leaders doesn't have much time. By the end of the year, they've got to recruit 3 people. It's a numbers game, and they revert back to old methods. And you think about it, what kind of a sales leader, why would anyone want to work with you? The people in your team, what would they say about you? The way that you operate, the culture within, how attractive are you? Have you looked at Glassdoor? So you really need to set your whole operation up for success, because many of the, Generation Zs are not working for you. They're not interested in working for you. And they're the people we need to attract into our operation. unless you have the right type of culture and the right mix of people that are going to be diverse. That's what people are attracted to. So you've actually got to set up your culture to make you more attractive before you're in the desperation mode to hire. So think of your organization as the pipeline to attract people in.
Yeah, and there are people like us who are encouraging individual contributors to look for a leader that they want to work with, you know, when they're looking at different opportunities. And I know it's a tough market out there, but you can't take just any opportunity, because you may end up with a really bad boss. And you need to work for companies that have the goals and vision that you believe in. And so it's important that you are aware of that. And it's important for companies to know that, you know, people still, even in this economy, they're not going to be hired just because they're looking for a job. They're going to be hired if they think it's a good fit, and culture is super important. And you know, looking like and acting like who our customers are is what customers want as well. They don't want a buying team or a selling team that doesn't represent who they are either.
Absolutely. We've talked about the assessments and how critical that is in terms to make sure you've got your hiring funnel right. We talked about onboarding. There's a stat here by Sales Benchmark Index that says that more than 20% of new sales hires, leave even leave past the onboarding period. They've decided that it's not right for them. So think of the amount of investment of time not to actually get past the onboarding period. It's incredible. So onboarding is absolutely critical. And tracking performance, 90-day check-ins. Managers don't do enough of that coaching and checking in on a regular basis. So you've got to be systematic about it, and it's part of your culture. But also, every culture is uniquely different, your customer base. So you've really got to refine continuously the outcomes, not based on assumptions. So you've got to track and measure how successful you are. But also, the other thing I thought about when you were talking, Lori, is that how are people recruited now? It's often through networks. People talk, don't they? They will recommend you, but they won't recommend you in. It's like, oh, I wouldn't go and work for him. I wouldn't work for that culture. They say this and do another thing. So it's really important, your reputation.
Yeah, people are in private communities telling people, I wouldn't work for this company because of this that happened to me, or that I have seen happen over and over again. And people should be aware of that, people talk and they share insights, and I'm glad to see that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap up here. We've got if we've got any more comments that are coming in, happy to answer those. Make sure that you do connect with myself and Lori. There's lots of people that watch the recording, so please do ask any questions there. I always go back and look at the comments as they come in over the next week. But I think that one of the takeaways, and I know you'll have yours as well, is that traditional hiring is not working, guys. It is not working. You need to take a data-driven approach so that you can predict success from day one. And it's interesting, in AI, it's raising the bar. It's not a threat, it's raising the bar. It's giving back a lot more time, so use it wisely. So Lori, what's your takeaways from this discussion?
Well, I want to say something to candidates who are out there that are having a tough time. Build stronger networks, talk to people, and have a person refer you into a company. Don't do it through the AI screening of resumes.
Great ad. That's fantastic. Now, I normally do a monthly live, and my next one's going to be the 10th of July. Now, next month's theme, we're talking about right people, right seats. So we're talking about the team rather than focusing on the hiring aspects. There'll be elements of what Lori and I have talked about in terms of an AI world. What does it mean to your team? So AI won't replace salespeople, but underperformers beware. So it'll be around that subject. So join me same time, 5 p.m. BST, 12 noon EST on the next live 10th of July. Thank you so much for joining us and your comments. Thank you so much, Lori, for sharing your insights. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy.